I'll do the translation on this particular verse. Kindly explain all about the elementary principles of creation, the number of such elementary principles, their causes, and their development, and also the process of devotional service and the method of mystic powers. So we'll go to the next verse. Yogeshvaraishvarya
Yogeshvaraishvarya
Gatir
Gatir
Yogeshvaraishvarya Gatir
Yogeshvaraishvarya Gatir
Linga
Linga
Bhangas
Bhangas
Tu
Tu
Yoginam
Yoginam
Linga Bhangas Tu Yoginam
Linga Bhangas Tu Yoginam
Vedopaveda
Vedopaveda
Dharmanam
Dharmanam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Itihasa
Itihasa
Purāṇayaho
Purāṇayaho
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Yogeshvarashvarya Gatir
Yogeshvaraishvarya Gatir
Linga Bhangastu Yoginam
Linga Bhangastu Yoginam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Yogeshvarashvarya Gatir
Yogeshvaraishvarya Gatir
Linga Bhangastu Yoginam
Linga Bhangastu Yoginam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Yogeshvarashvarya Gatir
Yogeshvaraishvarya Gatir
Linga Bhangastu Yoginam
Linga Bhangastu Yoginam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Itihasa Purāṇayaho Yogeshvaraishvarya Gatir
Yogeshvaraishvarya Gatir
Linga Bhangastu Yoginam
Gavangastu Yoginam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Itihasa Purāṇayaho Yogeshvaraishvarya Gatir
Yogeshvaraishvarya Gatir
Gavangastu Yoginam
Linga Bhangastu Yoginam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Yogeshvaraishvarya Gatir
Yogeshvaraishvarya Gatir
Linga Bhangastu Yoginam
Linga Bhangastu Yoginam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Vedopaveda Dharmanam
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Itihasa Purāṇayaho
Anyone else? Okay. We'll go on to Yoga Ishvara
Yoga Ishvara
of the Master of the Mystic Powers.
Of the Master of the Mystic Powers.
Aishvarya,
Aishvarya,
opulence.
opulence.
Gati,
Gati,
advancement.
advancement.
Linga,
Linga,
astral body.
astral body.
Bhanga,
Bhanga,
detachment.
detachment.
To,
To,
but.
but.
Yoginam,
Yoginam,
of the mystics.
of the mystics.
Veda,
Veda,
transcendental knowledge.
transcendental knowledge.
Upaveda,
Upaveda,
knowledge in pursuance of the Veda indirectly.
knowledge in pursuance of the Veda indirectly.
Dharmanam,
Dharmanam,
of the religiosities.
of the religiosities.
Itihasya,
Itihasa,
history.
history.
Purāṇayaho,
Purāṇayaho,
of the Purāṇas.
of the Purāṇas.
Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. What are the opulences of the great mystics? And what is their ultimate realization? How does a perfect mystic become detached from the subtle astral body? What is the basic knowledge of the Vedic literatures, including the branches of history and the supplementary Purāṇas? Please repeat. What are the opulences of the great mystics?
What are the opulences of the great mystics?
And what is their ultimate realization?
And what is their ultimate realization?
How does the perfect mystic
How does the
perfect mystic
become detached from the subtle astral body?
become detached from the subtle astral body?
What is the basic knowledge of the Vedic literatures?
What is the basic knowledge of the Vedic literatures,
including the branches of history
including the branches of history
and the supplementary Purāṇas?
and the supplementary Purāṇas?
So purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Yogisvara, or the master of mystic powers, can exhibit 8 kinds of wonders of perfection by becoming smaller than the atom or lighter than a feather, getting anything and everything he desires, going anywhere and everywhere he likes, creating even a planet in the sky, etc. There are many Yogisvaras having different proficiencies in these wonderful powers, and the topmost of all of them is Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is the greatest yogi, and he can perform such wonderful things far beyond the ordinary living beings. The devotees of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, do not directly practice the process of mystic powers, but by the grace of the Lord, his devotees can defeat even a great Yogisvara like Durvasa Muni, who picked a quarrel with Maharaj Ambarish and wanted to show the wonderful achievements of his mystic powers. Maharaj Ambarish was a pure devotee of the Lord, and thus without any effort on his part, the Lord saved him from the wrath of Yogisvara Durvasa Muni. And the latter was obliged to beg pardon from the king. Similarly, at the time of Draupadi's precarious position, when she was attacked by the crews who wanted to see her naked in the open assembly of the royal order, the Lord saved her from being stripped by supplying an unlimited length of sari to cover her. And Draupadi knew nothing of mystic powers. Therefore, the devotees are also Yogisvaras by the unlimited power of the Lord. Just as a child is powerful by the strength of the parents, they do not try to protect themselves by any artificial means, but are saved by the mercy of the parents. Maharaj Parikshit inquired from the learned Brahmana Sukadeva Goswami about the ultimate destination of such great mystics, or how they attain such extraordinary powers by their own efforts or by the grace of the Lord. He inquired also about their detachment from the subtle and gross material bodies. He inquired also about the purport of the Vedic knowledge. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, the whole purport of all the Vedas is to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus become a transcendental loving servant of the Lord. Om Jnana Tamanandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksus Unminitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakadamayam Dadanti Swavadantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchakopa Tribhischa Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitadam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So the verses again kind of explain all about the elementary principles of creation, the number of such elementary principles, their causes, and their development, and also the process of devotional service and the method of mystic powers. What are the opulences of the great mystics, and what is their ultimate realization? How does the perfect mystic become detached from the subtle astral body? What is the basic knowledge of the Vedic literatures, including the branches of history and the supplementary Purāṇas? So Srila Prabhupada in his purport is talking about the Yogeshvaras, the masters of mystic powers. And here we see a great yogi. They can perform many mystic powers. Sometimes I've heard 8, sometimes I've heard 16 different things that they could do. This particular yogi could see they can go anywhere they'd like. You know, this is the easy journey to other planets. By performing mystic yoga, you can actually transfer to any planet. But there's some qualification, there's some austerity. Some yogis, they become smaller than an atom, lighter than a feather. They get anything they desire. They could just reach anywhere or go anywhere. There's a devotee, he actually experienced this. He was by a river chanting, and he actually saw, a yogi come out of the water. He never saw him go in the water. He just saw him come out of the water. So they could travel through the different waterways and, go in one place many thousands of miles away and come out another way, just through the Ganges. And, of course, Ganges comes from this spiritual, goes through all the different planets, up to the heavenly planets too. So I guess you could probably go there also through that way, through that method. So this is the Yogeshvara. And look, there's another example. As Prabhupada said, they can even create a planet in the sky. So we can see, like Hardama Muni, he created an aerial mansion that can travel to all the different planets. It's one example. Another example, not only planets, but palatial flying mansion that could go anywhere. So this is how they can become proficient in different wonderful powers, how they have this great yogic power. But Prabhupada mentions how, but the greatest of all of them, the topmost, is Lord Shiva. And he can perform such wonderful things, far beyond any ordinary living being. And this is just one example. During the churning of the ocean of milk, the first thing that was produced was this poison that could have destroyed the entire universe. But Lord Shiva, being merciful, he actually reduced all that poison into the palm of his hand and drank it. And therefore he has a blue neck, a bluish neck now from that. So it's just amazing. Nobody can do that. Nobody can imitate. Or to speak of trying to take toxic drugs, intoxicants, trying to imitate Lord Shiva, thinking that they could do these things, but they can't. They actually end up destroying themselves, destroying their minds, and destroying their bodies by doing such imitative activities, trying to imitate the mystics, the greatest yogi, Yogeshvara, Lord Shiva. So Prabhupada also mentions the other example of a great yogi, Durvasa Muni. And he wanted to show his great mystic powers by trying to chastise Maharaj Ambarish, so he picked a quarrel with him. And, he wanted to show his great wonderful achievements. Look what I could do. Out of my hair, I could create a demon that will kill you. So look at Maharaj Ambarish. He completely looks undisturbed because he's always absorbed in Krishna. And without him doing anything, Krishna sent his Sudarshan chakra to protect him and to kill Durvasa Muni. So Durvasa Muni, with his mystic powers, he traveled everywhere trying to get shelter, even to Lord Vishnu, who said that, no, I cannot protect you. You have offended my devotee, and therefore you must actually go and take shelter of him. And this is what he actually did. He came and had to beg forgiveness at the feet of Maharaj Ambarish. He was obliged to do that. And then Maharaj Ambarish didn't even feel offended. He was such a great soul. He was a great Muni, actually. A Muni is one who remains grave. He doesn't talk nonsense. And Maharaj Ambarish was a very good example of that. Whenever he spoke, he just spoke about the pastimes of Krishna. And this is Mona. That what means is to refrain from unnecessary, nonsensical talk. And just talk about the pastimes of Krishna. So in that way, we can chant and hear about the Lord in order to perfect our life, just as Maharaj Ambarish did. And Prabhupada also mentions about Draupadi, her precarious position when she was attacked by these demoniac crews. They wanted to see her naked in this open assembly. And Krishna, being kind to her, when she just said, oh, Govinda, you promised that no devotee will never perish. Actually, this was a statement that's in the Bhagavad Gita. But the Bhagavad Gita wasn't even spoken yet. But yet that knowledge is eternal. It's not that, Bhagavad Gita is the only place that that's spoken. But actually it's eternal knowledge. It's been in existence from time immemorial. Because Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita after this particular incident. But yet she was praying up to Govinda. Your promise is that your devotee will never be perished. So she's took complete shelter of Krishna. She didn't have any mystic powers. She didn't know anything about that. So this is how the devotees are considered to be Yogeshvaras also, by the unlimited power of the Lord. When we take completely shelter of Krishna, then we have everything. The devotees aren't the losers. You think, I'm renouncing all this. You can see all this material opulences there in this assembly. If I renounce all these things, what am I going to? I'm going to lose out on everything. She was going to lose out on everything, her pride, her clothes, everything. And she just completely took shelter of Krishna. And she was saved. Krishna is so powerful, unlimitedly powerful. Then Prabhupada also mentions in his purport, just like a child is powerful by the strength of his parents and how they're saved. They don't try to protect themselves by artificial means, but they're saved by the mercy of the parents. So here we can see the parent is carrying the baby when there's some kind of riot or something happening here. So this child is taking shelter. So this is like a Krishna Bhakta. He has no desire for his own personal benefit. He's just completely dependent and protected by the Supreme. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he writes, Avyasya Rakshive Krishna Vishvasya Palana. That Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that he's desireless because Krishna gives him protection in all circumstances. It's not that he expects, and this is a very subtle point about the devotee. Someone may think, the devotees, they expect things from Krishna, or someone in charge of a temple may think, the devotees expect certain things after a certain time. But actually, it's a very subtle thing. The devotees, they don't expect anything or any assistance from Krishna. They just simply depend. So there's a subtle difference. Expecting or just being dependent of Krishna. So just like the child, he depends on his parents. The child doesn't know how to expect service from his parents, but is always protected nevertheless, right? Just out of the love of the parents. So this is called niskama. That's desirelessness, and that's the devotee. They're desireless. So we see even Karma Muni, after he created this great aerial mansion, that wasn't his ultimate goal of not life. That's prayas. He wanted to go something even more, shreyas, the ultimate destination. And that's what's being asked of Sukadeva Goswami. What's the ultimate destination of such great mystics? And we can see Karma Muni was certainly a great mystic. You see, and how did he attain his extraordinary powers? Was it by the grace of the Lord? He's asking all these questions. And by this pastime, we can learn all these subtle details of how, why, and the purpose, and what they go through, and why they give up such great, supposedly amazing opulences. I mean, who wouldn't mind having an aerial mansion and you could travel anywhere you want in the universe? It would be amazing. There's parks, lakes, servants, palatial buildings, nice furniture, beds, so many different things. But yet, what's he doing here? He's actually asking his son, who happens to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila Dev, please do me a favor and let me go to the forest. Let me renounce all this stuff. Why? Because he wanted to just completely be absorbed in Krishna. He wanted to fix his mind on Krishna. Just not think nothing of Krishna. That's a real Muni. He just thinks of Krishna. It's not that we just, think, about anything, a devotee, but a devotee has to think very deeply, very gravely, as Prabhupada describes this word Muni. There was one devotee who had to go, and he was having a lot of trouble, and eventually they had to take him to a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist's conclusion was that he thinks too much. He was just thinking too much about material things, what this person said about me today, what do I have to do here, and this happened to me, and what about that, and what about this, and nobody likes me there, and, this and that. So this is not the kind of thinking that we should do. We should think deeply about deep subject matters, not think deeply about mundane subject matters. So this is very important, the devotees. And this is what he wanted to do. He wanted to get free from family life, from any kind of distraction, and just completely absorbed in Krishna. Even though his son was the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is in his home. But still, he left, because this is the importance of the Vedic authority. He wanted to respect the Vedic authority, that at a certain age, you renounce all this and you go to the forest. And he got blessings from Kapila Muni, that yes, you go and you're just completely absorbed in me. And this is the process of, the sannyasi. He's always thinking of Krishna within himself. And there's two different kinds. There's one that they go out, the Goshtyanandis, they go out and they preach to many followers. But he went to the forest just to think about Krishna. So this is what we have today, that we have these preachers. They preach the glories of the Lord among many, many people. They perform missionary activities for the benefit of society. It's not that we go to the forest just to become monkeys or ferocious animals, but that means exclusively to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage oneself in full devotional service. And Prabhupada says that we don't have to go to the forest to do that, but we can do that in these major metropolitan cities. But that main purpose, Prabhupada writes, of sannyas life is to be in constant companion with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, either within his heart or hearing of him through oral reception. So in this particular age, it's more important to hear than thinking, because as we described, sometimes you think too much and then the mind becomes agitated. So we have to constantly hear about Krishna. That's why we're so fortunate to hear these questions by Maharaj Parikshit to Sukadeva Goswami, because he narrates all this transcendental knowledge. And then we're so fortunate that in this particular age, Lord Chaitanya has appeared, and if we just simply loudly vibrate Hare Krishna, we'll be able to think of Krishna immediately. So that's a process. The best process of self-realization in this age is therefore to chant Hare Krishna. So this is an interesting thing here. How does this relate to the class? This is a whole bunch of marshmallows. I don't know if anybody, I came across this one thing, that anybody ever heard of the marshmallow test? There's this marshmallow test it's given. It's actually given to 3 and 4-year-olds. It doesn't work with anybody else. It can't work with adults. But it's a #1 success indicator for these young children in school. And what it does, it predicts the success and the quality of life that these kids will have for the rest of their lives. So what they do is the teacher comes in and he offers this really nice, luscious marshmallow sandwich to the kids. And he says, I'm going to put, every one of you gets one of these. And I have to leave the room for a few minutes, but I'll be right back. And whoever has their cookie still on their desk, when I get back, you'll get another cookie, another marshmallow. So sure enough, the teacher leaves the room, and then he comes back in after a few minutes. And what did he discover? And they discovered this, that actually, usually it's like 50% of the kids eat the marshmallow, and 50% of them don't. So what's the difference? The difference is that the ones who do eat it, they stare at the cookie. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita. What does it say? Dayantaha Visayan. While contemplating the sense objects, one develops attachment to them. And we know what goes on from there. We actually become attracted to it, but eventually we become angry because it's not satisfying, and then we fall down. That's also said in the Bhagavad Gita. Indriyanam hi charatam yomano nuvidhiyate tad asya harati prajnam vairnavanam ivambasi. That just as a strong wind can sweep away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. So just see, these children, the ones that don't, they actually looked elsewhere. They looked around the room. They looked out the window. They looked at their shoes. They put their head down their desk and helplessly realized that they have no power over themselves. And this is a fact. We don't have power over ourselves. If you just focus on one thing with one of your senses, you're going to be swept away. Your intelligence will be swept away. So somehow or another, these young kids at that young age realized that they have no control over themselves. If they stare at that, they have to eat it. So this determined how they were. This is Shreyas and Prayas. That we have to perform some kind of austerity to get some kind of ultimate aim. For them, it was another cookie. But as you grow older, we see these mystic yogis. They wanted these 8 cities. They wanted opulence. These are their prayas. These are the rewards they want. They perform great austerities to attain these ends, these goals, these tasteful delights, these glimmering, glittering things of this material world. This is what they're after. But in order to advance spiritually as devotees and achieve the mercy of the Lord, we must be self-controlled. The senses must be restrained from sense gratification. What do we follow? We follow rules and regulations, religious principles. And without these austerities and penances, without sacrificing, we cannot achieve the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Kardama Muni actually advised his wife that you have to actually engage in devotional service with austerity, penance. You have to follow regulated principles. You have to give in charity. And then when you do that, the Supreme Lord will be so pleased with you, and he'll become your son. And this is what happened. The Supreme Personality of Godhead actually became the son of Devahuti. And he took charge of her. When Kardama Muni took sannyas, he blessed her and said that, Krishna will come. And Krishna appeared. And whenever, even Lord Kapila said this, he says, whenever I speak, or whatever I speak, whether it's directly or in the scriptures, It's authoritative in all respects for people of the world. So this is the authority. And this is how we can get rid of our avidya, get rid of the ignorance, getting this knowledge. This avidya actually means forgetfulness of one's identity. We're actually all spirit souls, but we've forgotten who we are. And we go around thinking, I'm this body. This is avidya. And then we become doubtful. So this is the knot of the soul, that doubtfulness is tied when the soul identifies with this material world. Praying, like prayas, it's like a prey. We're like animals that prey, trying to get all this prayas of the material world. That's a knot. It's called ahankara. So the junction of matter and spirit, that's where the ankara is, right in between those two. So we have to receive proper knowledge from disciplic succession, from the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Kapila Deva, or his representatives. And then we can become freed from this binding combination of matter and spirit. And Lord Brahma actually appeared to Devahuti, and he told her that your son will enlighten you. And he will travel all over the world and disseminate this Sankhya philosophy. So the demigods, they become distressed at the suffering of the living entities of this material world. And when they do, they become so compassionate that they actually approach the Lord to have some kind of remedy. So it's described in this chapter that the demigods are actually satisfied when the Lord incarnates and he relieves human suffering. So they were very happy to know that the Supreme Lord is in the womb of Devahuti, and they explained to her like this. So here we see we're also in school. We have our Bhaktivedanta school. And what are the marshmallows we are saying no to? What are the austerities and the sacrifices that we follow? Prabhupada made it very simple. He gave us 4 rules, told us to chant a certain number of rounds, and that way you will become full of Krishna consciousness. You'll be able to engage in devotional service. Devotional service is explained in the Nectar of Devotion as like an ocean. It's like an unagitated waves. And it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita that even though the ocean is filled by many thousands of rivers, millions and tons of water evaporates into clouds, yet the ocean is just the same unagitated ocean. So the laws of nature work on us. We experience misery, suffering, so many things in this material world. But if we're fixed in devotional service at the lotus feet of Krishna, then we're not agitated. As Prabhupada shows here, he talked about the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna was in an ocean of a battlefield of misery, of killing so many things. But yet, I heard somewhere that Arjuna's, like his pulse, it's not like his heart was beating fast. He was very calm. It's like a very, just sober. It's like when you're in your element, when you're actually doing the things where you're meant to be doing, you actually are very calm and peaceful. So can you imagine that? In the middle of this great war, Arjuna is just very focused and very, calm, like that. So the devotee, he becomes unagitated. He's introspective. He doesn't look outside to the material nature, but he looks into the spiritual nature. He's very sober. And this is how we can realize ourselves and get free from this false identification with matter and affection for these material things. So devotees are never in trouble themselves, or they cause trouble for others, because he sees everyone from the spiritual platform. So he sees himself and he sees others in the right perspective. I just seen a YouTube video about how these Muslim people, and I think it was in England somewhere, they're just becoming so disturbed and agitated about, how somebody was, because they identify with their religion, and they think that nobody who believes in their religion, they must die, or they must go to hell, like this. So they just go out and do these riots and these, very offensive, what do they call these when they go on marches and stuff like that, where go out in a parade, do a march. So they're becoming very obnoxious and blaspheming and cursing people and actually performing violence like this. But somebody with spiritual understanding, they see himself and they see others in the right perspective. And they don't cause any trouble for anyone. This is a devotee. And this is our real marshmallow. This is our real goal. And how do we do that? Because we are trained up by the instructions of the spiritual master. We can understand the distinction between the subtle and the gross bodies. As a question was asked, how does one get free from these lingas, these different subtle and the gross body? And Prabhupada explained to us that we can see the distinction between them, just like daily we dream. The gross body is lying down in bed, but the subtle body carries the soul to a different place. You go to another atmosphere. And it's like a little thread. It's like a subtle and biblical cord that the subtle body leaves the gross body and it travels all over the place. And sometimes if that subtle cord gets cut, then the soul leaves the body. But as long as that connection there, he comes back in the body. So he experienced that. And because that gross body has to be continued, the subtle body keeps coming back and settles in the present gross body. But we have to become free from the subtle body also. And that's called mukta linga. That's freedom from this subtle body. And Prabhupada also explained to us how when a man dies, he quits that gross body and he has a subtle body of mind, intelligence, and ego, and that's what carries him to a new body. And while you're existing in the present body, that same subtle body carries you from one stage of body to another, as explained in the Bhagavad Gita, from childhood to boyhood, like that. So mental development. So the mental condition of a baby is completely different from a boy, from a young man, from an old man. So these are different. So the death process of changing bodies takes place due to the subtle body. The mind, intelligence, and ego, they carry the soul from one gross body to another. So this is called transmigration of the soul. But there's another stage. And that's when one becomes liberated even from the subtle body. And at that time, that's when the living entity is competent and fully prepared to be transferred to this transcendental or spiritual world. Now, how does that compare? Our reward compared to the marshmallows of this material world. And it's only by devotional service we can understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. And after understanding Him perfectly in His transcendental position, then we can enter into the kingdom of God. And that's the process. It's called Tripada Buddhi Gati, or the path back home, back to Godhead. And that's where we attain our ultimate, our real Shreyas, ultimate goal of life. And as Kardama Muni, he attained this perfection, so we can also do that. We can achieve this ultimate goal of Bhagavati Gati, back home, back to Godhead. So thank you for your kind attention, and if there's any questions or comments, I guess we can ask now. Hare Krishna.
Gaudacandra, class. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Glad I didn't lose anybody.
I always like the visuals. They tremendously helpful. You talked about the mind. I like
subtle body.
You gave the example of the young boy who sends a psychiatrist and said that he thinks too much. Yeah. And then you went on to give sightings from the Bhagavad Gita about how we really can't, in one sense, control the mind unless it's fixed in Krishna consciousness. It's like the wind. Right. I was noticing here in Hawaii, we just have come out of a calm period where it was very, very calm for, probably about 10 days. And this time of the year it gets quite warm. Relatively speaking, it never gets really hot in Hawaii, but we pretty much always have ocean breezes. But sometimes in September, when we go from our summer to our fall season, the winds break down. and there's just nothing you could do to change the wind. But then all of a sudden, I noticed late yesterday afternoon and this morning, the trade winds are back. It's blowing so nicely. I was thinking, it's kind of like that. Sometimes our mind is, even for the materialist, the mind is more peaceful just due to the modes of material nature at that particular time. It could be their karma. It could be astrological influences. Sometimes there's very calm periods, and sometimes there's very strong periods where the mind is just really particularly wild and agitated. Just like sometimes the wind here blows a gale. It'll blow 30, 40, 50 knots. I mean, it can get really strong.
Yeah.
But, so as devotees, we still experience, like particularly at certain times of the day, we'll notice that the mind is very peaceful. It seems like the wind, just like the trade winds, the Hawaiians always say that the trades, they go to sleep at night and they wake up in the morning. Typically, it's because when our trade winds are driven by the presence of the sun. When the sun comes up, the winds become stronger. And when we have to cross certain channels here in Hawaii sailing, many times we'll sneak across at night. We'll wait till the evening when the winds are very calmed down some. And so I was just thinking that that's how we try to take advantage of that as devotees, like during the mornings when we're particularly chanting and studying. We want to really take advantage of the Brahma Muhurta, when just because of how the modes are acting at that particular time, we're not so pure. We're still affected by the modes. So we take advantage of the presence of the mode of goodness when the mind is much more peaceful. Just like now, it's quite easy to listen to Bhagavatam. I guess it's harder for you because you're 3 hours later than us. You've got, I guess, around 10 o'clock already. But anyway, I was just thinking how it's really important that we take advantage of the times when our mind will naturally be more peaceful for the type of meditation, of meditating upon Krishna's name, meditating upon Krishna's pastimes. And then during the midday, when the mode of passion becomes more prominent, then it's a good time for doing business and getting other, quote unquote, worldly things accomplished. And then again in the evening, it seems to calm back down again. And then Prabhupada gave us that ISKCON sandwich.
Right.
Where, we have a morning program, evening program. And I think most of us, we find that we study and chant, and particularly in the morning, and then maybe a little evening's also a good time to study and chant. And middle of the day is a good time to just get things done. I heard one time Prabhupada said, Bhagavatam in the morning, bank balance in the afternoon. But as we become purified, as we become detached and not affected by the modes of nature, then eventually taking advantage of the modes of nature for now, so we're not so strongly conducted by them, or at least we use them in our advantage. Then as we become purified, then it doesn't matter whether it's night, day, a devotee will always be, his heart will just naturally be thinking of Krishna, regardless of what the modes of material nature are doing. He's unaffected.
Yeah, that's true. We have to get free a lot of these marshmallows. There's so many attractions that we have in our lives, and just do the austerity of diving into the real nectar of the Bhagavatam, and, like you're saying, take advantage of these opportunities where it's easier to concentrate and focus. And by doing that, we will gain so much more,
We have to not eat the marshmallow.
Yeah, say how many things we can say no, how many marshmallows we could say no to during the day.
Yeah. And then Krishna will give us the real fruit that we want. The fruit of love of God will eventually. Exactly. That's what we want. We don't want no dang marshmallow. Prema pumartha mahan.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, that's true. There was even somebody wrote a book about getting to know, saying no to, how people's lives A lot of people just say yes to everything, thinking that they're helping people or they're being nice, but actually we have to say no to things to say yes more to Krishna, No. So.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Dandavats. It's Vidogda Madhava Das.
Yes, Prabhu. Haribol.
Always look forward to your slideshows.
Thank you.
The Mormons and they want to become Brahma. They want to rule over the planet. And Scientologists, I saw a presentation once where, they want to become clear and they want to become powerful so they can even create planets or even destroy a planet. But, and so the yogis, some of them, they aspire for mystic powers and they practice these severe austerities like Durvasa Muni, and often they become puffed up. And the quarrel that Durvasa had with Ambarish was Ambarish, a king, who, on the external side of things, you could say he was a penny and, shilling and pence man. Yeah. He was, he was opulent. And so this yogi, he couldn't tolerate that Ambarish was more popular than he was. A mystic that had thousands of followers and so much power that he actually was able to go to Vaikuntha to put his, to try to beg off, the burning chakra that was chasing him all over the universe. But the devotees, they don't get caught up in this pride. They humbly depend on the Lord, and they develop a relationship with the most powerful of all mystics. And we saw that in the pastime of Ambarish. And it reminds us of what Sanjay says at the end of Bhagavad Gita: wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will be certainly opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. So if I could beg you a minute or two, I'd like to just tell you a story. It's not a big deal, but I was traveling in India with a Punjabi brahmachari, and he was wearing saffron. So his father met us in Calcutta, and then we were on the train to Puri. And after a while, I began to understand his family was wanting him to get married. And on the train ride to Puri, his father was preaching to him, and he was trying to get Ramananda to understand the meaning of Bhagavad Gita means to obey your father and mother. So then I chimed in, well, I told him, Mr. Chakravarti, you should write your own Bhagavad Gita, because the one I'm reading, Krishna, Krishna's saying you should surrender at his feet. So later in Chandigarh, I was at someone's house, and one of his relatives is telling Ramananda, and I'm sitting there in the living room, you should try for the happiness. And then I looked at this guy and I go, what happiness? What are you talking about? And then he folded his palms and he looked at me like it was like the deer in the headlights. He said, thank you for reminding me. Suddenly, he's reminded that it's all illusory, temporary happiness here. And, what Ramananda is trying for is higher. So, anyway, it's connected that they arranged for me to, this head of the Arya Samaj to take me out in the back of the house and have a little talk with me. And this man attempted to instruct me in some sort of Vedic Siddhanta. But, and it's not much credit to me, but with a few basic verses in Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, this man was devastated. He felt he was defeated. He became speechless. And he was a Sanskritist, and he asked me my name. And when I told him, he asked me, if I knew the meaning of my name. And I knew a few meanings from Prabhupada's books of the meaning of Vidagdha, and it's Krishna's name. And then he added a meaning I'd never heard before. He said that my name meant one who devastates in an argument. Anyway, I don't know if that's true, but I know that I'm not a Pandit, and I really had no business getting into a debate with the head of the Arya Samaj. But I must have been sincere enough at the time for something to come through that humbled this man. And so for the devotees, it's sometimes not what you know, it's who you know. And if one has unflinching faith in Guru and Guranga and has a desire to be a transparent medium, to give others some sort of Krishna consciousness, Krishna may be pleased to speak through something through that person. But that requires humility and transparency, and not thinking we're not so qualified, like a child who's dependent on his parents. We have to feel that kind of dependence on the Lord. And certainly Srila Prabhupada demonstrated that sort of transparency, and Krishna came through him like a river.
Wow. That's a great story. Thank you, Prabhu.
Mm-hmm.
That reminded me of Kardama Muni. He was asked by his father to get married. But he fulfilled that order. He did experience some material happiness, but then what did he do? He wanted to get out of it. He said, okay, I fulfilled my promise to my father. He wanted me to be a progenitor. So now, what does he do? He renounces the whole thing. And that's what he did. He just completely renounced. He took leave.
Right.
And focused on Krishna. So that's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal isn't, to become a progenitor or enjoy material happiness.
I've heard it's the only instruction you can actually disobey from the Guru. Yeah. Wow.
That's cool.
But like you said, he did it and then he renounced.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting that we talk about these different munis. There's Durvasa Muni, there's who is considered to be like a mystic yogi. There's Charvaka Muni, who is completely into sense gratification, beg, borrow, steal, just get ghee. And then we have the other munis like Kardama Muni and Narada Muni, completely the opposite. So I don't know why they call them munis, these sense enjoyers. I guess because they're focused in mental speculators and all they think about is sense gratification. But we have to become the proper muni, like Narada Muni and Kardama Muni.
Yeah, there's sincere men, austere men. We can think like that also. It's not just the devotees are sincere, but we have something powerful if we can become pure enough. The Lord, the people are fond of saying the Lord is on my side, well, he can really be there.
Right.
If someone's a pure devotee like Draupadi, at any moment, he can appear as he, by his own sweet will.
Yeah, it's that dependence Prabhupada talks about. Such a subtle difference between expecting something from the Lord and completely just depending on him. I mean, he has everything, Krishna. He's the source of everything. He's the master of all mystics. If you just completely just depend on him, what could you not have? And don't have to worry about, you're actually peaceful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, like one Ram Bhakta, Radhanath Swami told me about. I met him, Balaram Swami, and I asked, what is your goal? Because one of his Sanskrit, he was an Ayurvedic doctor, he's in his 80s, and he was a Ramanuja Vaishnava, a Sri Vaishnava, and he was a Sanskritist, and he had students that were studying Sanskrit and medicine from him. And one of the students said something that made me think that this student, he had some desire for Brahman realization. So I went to him. I went to Balaram Swami, and I said, what is your goal? And he says, to serve Ram, either here or there. And that's Vaishnava. So one can feel the presence of the Lord here also. One can serve the Lord here also.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Jai. Thank you, Prabhu. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments, questions?
I'll take issue with something that Vidagdha said. He said that, and he actually defeated himself with what he said. He said, I'm not really a pandit, but yet Vidagdha defeated the scholar.
I know, yeah.
We in Gita, Krishna says, Yomam evan asamodho gyanati purushottama, one who knows me without doubting it, as the supreme of all beings. Sasarva vid bhajate mam. He knows everything. Sarva vena bharata. There is nothing more to be known. So, though I know, of course, I know what Vidagdha was saying. I'm just trying to make a point that Pandit doesn't really, in the highest sense, doesn't mean one who knows a million shlokas,
right,
but one who really knows a Siddhanta, which obviously Vidagdha knows well because we always love hearing him speak.
Mm-hmm.
And as he said, he devastated the scholar. And we often give the example of, I think we just mentioned this the other day, about when the cowherd boys were sent by Krishna and Balaram to report to the Brahmins, the Pandits, that they were hungry. And the Pandits wouldn't give them the time of day when they said, Krishna and Balaram are hungry. But they went to the wives of the Brahmins, who are not considered Pandits, or not considered great scholars, but they really had Krishna in their hearts. They knew the conclusion of all scripture. They knew the end of all knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Because Krishna says, Veda ishtasavar aham eva vedyo, of all the Vedas I am to be known. So when one knows the essence, the conclusion of all Vedas, is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're His eternal servants. The purpose
mm-hmm.
of life is to surrender our hearts and souls to Krishna. They're the greatest pundits. So I say Vidagdhaji is in the highest sense, a great pundit.
Yeah, just like Draupadi didn't know anything about mystic powers, but yet she was a great mystic. Same way, we may not know anything about punditmas, but you can defeat great scholars.
But it becomes more, Ambarish wasn't a great mystic, but he defeated, Sir Durvasa Muni was forced to follow his feet. There was no other way out for him. So, being a devotee, being a good devotee is that's the thing. To try for, to aspire for. To be a good devotee means that, yes, you'll have the whole Vedic library if you need it, or you'll have whatever is needed. Krishna will provide that.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to become a pure devotee for that to happen.
Yep. The ultimate shreyas. Jai, thank you so much.
And even short of being pure devotee, at least those that are on the path, that are purely on the path, that are following,
right,
and know the conclusion,
right,
they become empowered by their guru.
Mm-hmm.
It can happen even in a moment, meaning you're not quite there all the time, but in a given moment, you're there.
Mm-hmm.
You're properly situated. You're transparent.
Mm-hmm.
You're Krishna conscious. You're remembering Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
There's a nice verse in Gita where Krishna says, Anashrata karma palang karyan karma karot yet sasanyasi cha yogi cha nanaragarana chakriya. Krishna's describing that who was the real sannyasi? Who was the real yogi? An ashrita karma palam, one who was not anashrita, one who was not taking shelter. An ashrita karma palam, he's not taking shelter, the fruits of his work. Karyan karma karotiya, and he's working as he's obligated, he's spiritually. He's performing his spiritual duty. Sasanyasi cha yogi, he's the real sannyasi, he's the real yogi. Nacharagana chakriya, not one who lights no fire and performs no work.
Wow, that's a great quote. Yeah, it's nice.
Gaudacandra Prabhu.
Yes, Brahmananda.
I know it's hard to pay attention to everything, but did you see in the chat, Balabhadra put a question?
Oh no, I just have my screen taking the full thing.
Unless Balabhadra Prabhu.
Actually, that question wasn't really in reference to what Gaudacandra Prabhu said. It was in reference to something that I thought I heard Vedanta Madhava say about how it's the only time that one can actually disobey instructions, and that sounds pretty wild. That there can be a moment when one actually has a license to disobey instructions, especially from the spiritual master or something like that.
To get married, I think he said. You can disobey that order to get married, yeah. I guess if the spiritual master tells you to.
No, it's just the Vedic. It's in the Vedas that's the one instruction you can resist is probably a better word. Not disobey, but you can resist the instruction to get married.
Anyway, I was just even to say resist. Oh my gosh, that takes some pretty bold realization to resist the instructions of the spiritual master.
But you know your own heart. Like the guru is saying, okay, looks like you're a householder. Why don't you get married? And then you're thinking, oh my God, I got to get more serious.
Go to Shadababu.
Yes. Hariboku.
By the way, Dandavad, Special Prabhupada, long time no hear, no see.
Yeah, yeah. Good to hear your voice.
There was a couple of things that you mentioned in your class, and I was somewhat distracted with one of them, with one point that you were making, so I'm not sure if I heard it correctly. But I think I heard you talk about how one can be calm and peaceful just doing what he's supposed to be doing in devotional service. And I'm just, from the point of view of practical reality, for example, in my life, I'm a householder, and we're struggling to maintain our devotional service. We're doing the best we can, but it seems that we're not at all peaceful in our situation. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question that you brought up, because Prabhupada said, actually the yogis in the Himalayas, they don't have headaches, they don't have disturbances, but he said, I have a lot of anxieties, Prabhupada said, because I'm maintaining this movement, and I have a lot of headaches. But these problems are his transcendental ecstasies, he said, because he's spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. So this is the difference between the Goshtyanandis and the Bhajana, what do they call them? Bhajanandis, where they actually go out into the society and they go through all kinds of risks and troubles to spread Krishna consciousness. But the point is that we don't want to be too distracted by the waves. We don't, even amongst these things, it's not that Prabhupada was so disturbed that he gave it up or that he became angry or, like that. Just like Arjuna in the battlefield, there's so much things that are happening. He was peaceful, but yet he was angry. I mean, he was angry to fight. But that anger was controlled for Krishna. So whatever we can do for Krishna, even if it's, maybe you have a householder, so you try to dovetail those for Krishna service. And maybe we should ask, are we suffering a lot? Are we disturbed a lot? Because maybe we're trying to get too many marshmallows. How many things can we say? How many things can we say no to? So we have to just see like that.
Thank you. A very nice answer. Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing that I was curious about, because you began the class talking at one point about the Vasamuni and Ambarish Maharaj, and so my question is not entirely relevant to your point, but just because it's a question that came to my mind when I heard you speak about them. Because you were making the point of how devotees, because we're dependent on Krishna, therefore devotees automatically a perfect mystic, because he's actually depending on Krishna to do everything that whatever need to be done. Yeah. So it my remembrance about the history between Durvasa Muni and Ambarish Maharaj is that Lord Vishnu actually gave Maharaj Ambarish the Sudarshan Chakra as a gift because of his devotional service. And then, of course, Durvasa Muni became envious and committed offenses. And so my question is, it would seem to me, because it's not clear in the Bhagavatam that Krishna was anticipating Durvasa Muni's offensive behavior, but because Krishna does say in the Bhagavad Gita, I know all that has happened in the past, present, and future, and I also know everyone. So therefore, what is your take on that? Do you think that Lord Vishnu gave Ambarish Maharaj that chakra because he anticipated the incident between him and Durvasa Muni? Or
I don't know if I don't know if that is that correct that he actually gave Mr. Sudarshan Chakra. I don't think so. I think it just
no, he gave it to him as a gift, and Maharaj Ambarish worshipped it as a result.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
He worshipped.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, Krishna knows whatever is going to happen, but it's not like he used it against Durvasa Muni, though. Krishna actually.
But
yeah.
But because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I know everything that has happened in the past, all things that are going to happen in the future, as well as all things that are happening at present. I also know all living beings. So it would stand to reason by that verse in Bhagavad Gita that when Krishna gave Maharaj Ambarish the Sudarshan Chakra, it's kind of like, it just gives you the impression that he anticipated the incident that would arise between Maharaj Ambarish and Durvasa Muni.
It could be. But, whether he gave it to him or not, I mean, Krishna could send it either way. But, yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting point. I never quite heard it like that. But, yeah, that's cool. That's true. Krishna knows everything. Jai.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the class.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu, for paying attention, being there.
Of course, we know that Krishna will not tolerate an offense against his devotee, even the devotee will tolerate the offense.
Yeah.
And that's generally our understanding in that Leela, is that Ambarish took no offense at all, but Krishna wouldn't tolerate it. Therefore, he sent that Sudarshan disc. So whether he knew ahead or not ahead, the main point we want to understand is that Krishna won't tolerate offenses against his devotees. And then the only way to mitigate that offense is to take shelter of the devotee, not even Krishna. That's sort of the main essence of that lesson, as I understand it, anyway.
That's true. Jai. Thank you for so much. Hare Krishna. Any other comments or realizations?
No,
Jai.
I was going to thank you for a very nice presentation, both orally and visually.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhus. It's only by your inspiration and mercy.
Balabhadraji, welcome back. We missed you. Where you been?
I missed everyone else as well, please believe me. Where have I been? The list goes on and on. But I've got some time now, for my routine that I can actually
you're on the
start
schedule
coming.
for tomorrow.
Oh, that won't be so, because I told Ramanandaji Prabhu that I opened up his email this morning about tomorrow, but I had already scheduled an appointment to be with someone tomorrow, and I made that schedule yesterday. But I think Ramananda Prabhu said he was going to reschedule me for next week.
Yeah, Monday.
Good.
Next week.
We missed your association, Prabhu.
Oh, I've totally missed everybody. Yours, Ramananda's, the mother's. What is that weird sound?
That's my
parrot.
Oh, I missed the parrot too. I missed the parrot as well.
Yeah.
Jai.
Chitananda Prabhu is giving class tomorrow.
Haribo. I'll try to make it. I got that appointment I have to keep, but I'll try to make it in time.
Okay, thank you very much. Gaudacandra Prabhu.
Yes.
Okay.
Really,
Thank you.
Thank you, Gaudacandra. Thank you,
Hare
everyone.
Krishna.
Thank you for all your association, and Goes to Srimad Bhagavatam, Goes to Srila Prabhupada.
See you
Hare
later.
Krishna.
Get it go.
Hare Krishna.